Hey, this is Notser, and today we're taking a look at the Tier 8 British aircraft carrier, Implacable. We are on the map Warrior's Path, and a couple days ago I covered the Indomitable, which is the premium Tier 8 British aircraft carrier that will be released sometime with the British aircraft carrier line, which should hit live client for everyone to play in 8.1 or 8.2. Don't really know exactly where. All depends on the balance, right? And, what are we getting with the Implacable? There's an armored flight deck. It does reduce the size of the squadron inventory. You will have to keep that in mind. You only have enough, not for a full squad. Even if you use your flight modification module that extends the hangar space by 2, you still need to reclaim some of your aircraft when you recall them. And that's just a byproduct of the armored flight deck. There isn't as much inventory that you can keep the aircraft, so you can, withstand some punishment. But on top of that, armored flight deck, we get actually the British Torpedoes, which is super exciting. Now, the British Torpedoes are probably the best in the game, by far, for carriers. It's shallow and very easy to activate point blank on a target. Now, obviously, this is the attack squadron, but pretty much all the aircraft share the same sort of drawbacks compared to the premium. The premium's incredibly fast. The premium does not have the torpedo bomber. In response to all this, the aircraft are slower. Their maneuvering's probably a little bit easier, if I'm going to be honest. The speed, it's really hard to over-aim. Whereas with the Indomitable and the 180 to 260 knot speed aircraft, it's much more easy to just have the momentum deny you a kill, because it's dragged you through. So we've got our Torpedo Bombers. These are Barracudas, and note that they are Tier 7. Wargaming intends to use different tiers to keep everything in balance, along with different equipment. I believe this was a game where I was testing whether the old torpedoes that became the primary torpedoes, the Mark 12 torpedoes, that was going to carry forward. And that absolutely is going to carry forward, and this game shows and proves you don't need the upgraded Mark 15 or 16 torpedoes. Those torpedoes are overkill. These torpedoes are just fine. Now, there's a couple enemy cruisers that are trying to camp the corner on A, and I wanted to at least keep them spotted passively. At the very least, that was what I was looking for, but it was not a viable threat. Because it's multiple cruisers laid on top of each other, of course they're going to have defensive fire. So instead I'm going after the Gneisenau, who just happens to have used his aircraft, his fighter, and we're going to just try and drop point blank on him. And he's turning in, so I'm going to try and avoid that. I do see that the fighters have caught up to me, and unfortunately the fighters, it was a bad situation to be in. Because the fighters knocked out a significant amount of my torpedo bombers, which will then have to be reclaimed, unfortunately. Because of that, instead of scrambling my cluster bomb dive bomb system, I choose to use my attack squadron, which I feel like will work better against these camping cruisers. I love the dive bombers for the Brits, but they're just not good for cruisers. Cruisers are mostly too small, and honestly, the dive bombs themselves, they don't throw out enough of bombs to consistently hit smaller targets like cruisers and DDs. So, attack squadrons are your go-to sort of chip damage source. And this enemy Kronstadt, both of them obviously very strong. Someone has actually used defensive AA, so I've got to do this very quickly. And I'm hoping that very quickly involves, flying out of the threat before we lose too many aircraft. Oh, please just get out of this. Get out of this so I can recall. I don't want to lose any more. Well, this was a bad idea. If you're in this situation, don't go back in. Recall the aircraft. Make sure they're fully healthy, because now defensive AA is going to knock out at least 2. And look at that. Immediately punished for that poor decision. I should have just recalled after I got completely out of the AA bubble and then scrambled another squadron. complete misplay by myself. But we're going to scramble our torpedo squadrons once again. Because the torpedo squadrons are so good, I don't mind that the dive bomb is really only designed for aircraft carriers and battleships. These torpedoes will more than make up for any damage that I may or may not get. So, approaching the Kronstadt, entering the aim as soon as possible, so it will, of course, shrink down, and then point blank drop it. Literally point blank. I love that the torpedoes have that point blank nature because it allows me to look through the flak and always have the activation window precise and accurate, whereas something like the Japanese activation window is incredibly extended out to the point where you're looking through flak literally to see if there's enough time for the torpedo to activate before it makes contact. And we take out the Buffalo just like that. All the enemies near A are gone, and yes, we're going to send a waypoint towards A, and we're going to move forward. So, one of the issues with the Brits is the fact that the torpedo bombers are so good. I just don't think that the torpedo bombers will be this good when it makes it to live. Obviously, the aircraft carrier are fairly slow. Even boosted, they barely reach the premium base speed. So that is working against me, but I don't care about the speed of the aircraft if every drop can be masterful, and they can be with the Brits. So we're just going to try and pick on the enemy Mayhan, get a point-blank torpedo launch on him. I don't really want to give him a chance to change his momentum. And we're able to clip him just a little bit. Yes, he did continue to keep his momentum going forward, but if I would have led him the other direction, maybe I don't get a hit. Plus, it's British, so very easy to rotate in and attempt to get another drop. And there is, I think this is the Gneisenau now. I was never going to get the torpedo on it. I needed to just drop that and move on with my life. And finally, we will have our dive bombs. So just like the Indomitable, the dive bomb functions the same way. You have a neutral aim that then narrows up into more of a parallel course, and the aircraft uses the momentum to move through the area very quickly. It reduces the time that you're over target, but it also makes it to where you need to practice with the British bombing system, because it is very different. So, as I'm moving out, enemy torpedo bomber is trying to send in. In an attempt to deny the area, either through an escape route or for just a little bit of chip damage on his way to friendlies, I just wanted to try and slow him down. The fighter is really not that good right now, and it is a glaring issue with the aircraft carrier. It just doesn't contribute enough. You can't defend your team. You can't feel like you're defending your team. It's really just there to waste the button. And I would love for Wargaming to develop the idea out further. Just being real, it's not there yet. Get a little bit of damage on the Gneisenau. Honestly, did not expect him to be that close. The Cleveland uses his defensive fire, which I fly through as quickly as I can, and we're trying to make it over to this Amagi. Now, the Amagi has 5.8 kilometer AA range, but it's not really that bad. And oh, of course, he goes into the smoke cloud that was lifted by the friendly, and he's not going to show himself or anything, but the smoke dissipates just in the nick of time, and we get on a parallel course. This looks pretty good. We do set one fire. Would love another one, and I should just try and recall you. It's always interesting, because with the F key spam sort of nerf, there's no way out in a situation like that. If I go into the F key, it's going to force the aircraft carrier to sort of fly up into the air and be vulnerable for a longer period. Or I just spend more time over target while I'm avoiding the flak and take continuous damage and lose the aircraft squadron regardless. But we did lose it, and I did have to switch. So the Iowa, he's pulled a Notser, a hard Notser. And British aircraft carriers, they love it when enemy ships pull Notsers because it's so easy to just torpedo them. Point blank torpedo. I've lost so much over here. I am considering using the heal, and I should absolutely use that heal. The enemy Cleveland is just too powerful in that position. But we're going to line up another one, and yep, here is the heal. And we're going to give enough lead so the aim point will shrink back down. And look at all the flak. I'm trying to slow down the aircraft. They are also just slow in general. It's a nice feature, honestly, because players were used to the Japanese aircraft carrier speed and then the slight dip by the Americans. But then the Brits come, and yeah, there's real speed difference. They finish off the Iowa. Great. We're doing okay. AA seems to be doing just fine. I'm helping the Enterprise defend against the enemy aircraft carrier. We can keep this up. There's no DDs left on either side, but we do have a 2-ship advantage. They have a 2-base advantage, but if we can get the 2 ships dead, it'll be much easier. And this Cleveland, now that he's isolated, I know he's used defensive AA in an attempt to try and keep the friendly Iowa up. Obviously, that didn't work out, so we're going to punish. This is the bread and butter of the aircraft carrier. Isolate the vulnerable target and go after him. And I do have my attack squadron. Not an ideal squadron, honestly, but it'll suffice. It really will. It'll set a fire, it'll force out damage control, and if he doesn't use damage control, well, we're going to get some free fire damage for a little bit. It's a win-win in my book. And I'm just trying to easily rotate around with a nice smooth angle, and oh yes, enemy team did a great job. I dropped this immediately, and I try and recall. There's a fighter that was just deployed, and I don't want him to scramble and engage my attack squadron. I don't want to take any more losses. I've already made enough mistakes this game. I don't want to make any more. And obviously, it's the Brits, so of course my next squadron that I'm going to scramble is Torpedo. The Torpedo Squadron's just too good. It's just too good to ignore. Now, will it be this good when it goes live? Hard to say. Because a lot of why it's successful is because it's easy to use. You know, it's point blank. And I don't know that Wargaming wants to get rid of that. You know, in fact, I think Wargaming would prefer to not change it at all. And they feel pretty good about it. Because when they tried to introduce some balance tweaks, honestly, they didn't really attack this at all. So, for them, the Brits should always be able to drop these 2 little nice high-damage torpedoes at point-blank range. Most likely will cause a flood. But remember, we're getting that flood mechanic change also with the Brits' introduction. So this is really the most broken it'll ever be right now. I think that Iowa flooded out for like 40,000 damage because he was already in too much damage. But when it comes out, I think it'll feel pretty fair. Honestly, the flood mechanic going the direction that it is, you know, more fire-based, multiple locations, it slows your engine a little bit more, so it's a little bit more of a devastating effect from a performance standpoint, rather than devastation from the flood dot. Now, unfortunately, I haven't got any more dots. I don't really want to use the heal in this situation, but I also want to get this last drop off, and I'm just not going to get in. Because continuous is going to tick before this torpedo gets in the water, just as, yeah, of course, the aim. Annoying. But I'm still going to work on these guys because it's the backside. It's the backside of my team and myself. Friendly Cleveland, very low. Torpedo Squadron, still reclaiming, so I'm going to scramble my cluster bombs. And it's 2 battleships, so it should work pretty well. I just want to try and predict the path that they intend to go, and then set up a parallel course. And I really love this cluster bomb effect. I'm not disappointed at all that it's really effective on a couple classes and not very on others. Everything comboed together, there's enough layering of the type of skill and the type of weapon equipment that they can all be used against pretty much every target, with varying degrees of success. But enemy Gneisenau now, he's angling ever so slightly every which way, and I can't really get the best parallel course. But I'm able to turn around very quickly, and this will actually, I think this will actually throw off, maybe just, oh, okay. So we have plenty of aim. I was afraid that maybe the aim would not settle down in time for it to be over the enemy ship. Clearly it was. My complaint and my concerns are more with the Indomitable on that one. If you were in that same situation with the Indomitable, yeah, you will overshoot that every single time. And I do mean every single time. And, oh, looks like we overshot that one. Yeah, really overshot that. Those cluster bombs, man, it's really awesome that the momentum never gets cut down. But it's really unfortunate because they're used to a completely different bombing style with both the Japanese and the Americans. Which, by the way, can we get some American love with the torpedoes? They are really weak compared to what is on display here and what was potentially on display with the Japanese. The Americans, you know, they bring the most, but the most low damage torpedoes doesn't really matter, you know? Enemy Gneisenau taken out. Work on the enemy Amagi. I'm still rotating around the map to avoid this Amagi who has been on another flank. And this is what I love about the aircraft carrier. It gives me some opportunities that I've never had. I've never had the opportunity to move around the map quickly and solve problems that come up on every nook and cranny. But I can, and I do, and I love that experience. We get 2 torps on the enemy Amagi. The first set caused a flood. Most likely, it was, yeah, damage controlled. And I'm trying to drop this so it doesn't hit the hull. Oh, were we able to drop it on the other side of the hull? Only one was. And it's able to activate just in the nick of time. Take out the enemy Amagi, and there you go. This guy's like, F you, RNG. Yeah, well, now we've got 2 bases to their 1, and we have a clear advantage on aircraft, ships, points, everything. This is definitely a win, and I'm just trying to reassign my AA so the sector is facing on the outside. One of the 2 enemy aircraft carriers is actually over by C point, and he's doing a great job in trying to line of sight, but look at who's on the approach. Rootin' tootin' Vladimir Putin. He's got his flank, and he should be able to fire on it. I headed north, maybe expecting the Kaga to still be there. It was definitely not, and we had to scramble towards another area of the map. But overall, the British aircraft carrier line feels really developed with its own unique identity. Having said all that, the torpedoes, a little too easy to make use of. The cluster bomb, a little too easy to make use of against the right target battleships and aircraft carriers. So I kind of feel like the British aircraft carrier line as a whole feels a little too easy compared to the American torpedoes and the Japanese and the American dive bombs. Both of those really suffer from just dive bombers having to be over the target for a really long time. Attacking over an island's great for those, but I kind of want a little bit more universal. And hopefully this is it, so players can really dive into the carrier rework and understand and enjoy it. Because I feel like part of the reason why players are the way they are with the rework is they don't find some of this fun. Either it was too easy, there's not enough counterplay potential with the fighters, and I still believe that to this very day. I still feel like the fighters have to just be reworked. They need to be some sort of aura of protection that extends out maybe over an objective and beyond, so that a player or a team can rely on the carrier to protect them going for something a little bit larger than this little immediate area of defense. Kind of sucks right now, but this ship, Implacable, definitely doesn't suck. And I can't wait to experience the British aircraft carriers when they come in 8.1 or 8.2. If you've got any comments or concerns that you have, leave in the comments. Obviously, I would love to hear them all. Top on the team, did a good job for my team, shot down a lot of aircraft, killed a lot of ships. Torpedoes are pretty good for the Brits. Hope you enjoyed this, hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you next time.